So thanks everybody for showing up tonight. Let me just go over briefly what SAPD's role in all this is. So we have trained our dispatchers. We have a video training clip that we've showed them, and it gives them a variety of questions that they will probably have to answer when people call in for, hey, I see somebody carrying a gun on their hip. And so instead of just sending an officer out there without any information, dispatchers will ask a series of questions. What is the person doing with the gun? Is the person angry? Is he arguing with somebody? Is he in a fight with somebody? Is there some sort of breach of the peace? Those type of questions, so that the officer can be prepared to deal with whatever's happening at the scene when he gets there or she gets there. So we've trained our call takers. Our officers, and this is a question that comes up all the time, our officers will not be running up to everyone that they see carrying a weapon on their hip or in a shoulder holster or wherever to check a license to see if they're legally carrying. We're simply not going to do that. We will assume that everyone is licensed to carry a weapon. Will there be people out there carrying who don't have licenses? I'm sure there will. Just like any other law, this one will be broken, but we will not be running up to people asking them for their license. If we do happen to stop someone who has a weapon, for whatever reason it may be, whether it's because they have a weapon or whether it's because of something else, and whether they have a weapon and something they may be doing with a weapon, whatever it's for, the officer will have the authority to disarm that person, to ask that person to give up the weapon while the officer is investigating the situation. And then that person will be required to give up the weapon. The weapon will be returned at the end of the investigation, the preliminary investigation. If in fact we have to seize a weapon for a violation of whatever it may be, that weapon will be put in the property room, not necessarily as evidence, but as property that will be recovered later on by the individual who it's taken from. In other words, if the officer feels that it's not a good idea to give that weapon back to that person, the weapon will be taken, put in the property room, and they can recover it later on. If the weapon is taken as a violation of the law or of some other offense where it's taken as evidence, then it will be seized as evidence and placed in the property room. As far as government buildings go here in the city, there will be areas designated as private in government buildings where you cannot carry a weapon. You can come into a lobby, a public lobby of a government building, carrying a weapon, but you will not be able to go outside of that public area with the weapon. If you have an appointment, let's just say at City Hall, if you have an appointment with, say, a council member, and you're carrying a weapon, we will have gun lockers there for you to put that weapon in. So we will accommodate anyone who's carrying a weapon. They can check their weapon or they can leave. If they don't want to check their weapon, then they're going to have to leave. Because we will not be meeting with people in City Hall, in private areas of the building that are carrying a weapon.
What about the tax office? They check you now.
If there's a public area in whatever building you're talking about, you will be able to openly carry or conceal carry in that public area. But beyond the public area, private offices where there's courts being held, where there's public meetings being held, you will not be able to carry a weapon. So that's SAPD's part in all this.
And what, real quick, Chief, so you said that your officers will not question everybody that they see with the...
Correct.
And it's only because of any probable cause, or?
If there's no reasonable suspicion that the person's doing anything wrong, we're not going to assume that he or she's doing something wrong because they got a gun on their hip. If there's reasonable suspicion for an officer to stop that person because of one reason, I'll give you an example. Let's say the officer knows that the person carrying the weapon has been convicted of a felony or family violence or something like that. Then the officer will stop that person. But we will not assume that people are not licensed, therefore we have to check them to make sure that they have a license. Okay?
So they have to give a time before you're allowed?
The officer has to have reasonable suspicion or probable cause before they'll stop somebody for carrying a weapon.
That's always the number.
Yeah.
Now, if I personally know, I mean, I live in this neighborhood, and I know who's locked on the punks.
Right.
And I see one of the punks with a gun, and I know he's been arrested before. Now, I'm gonna call you, cause I don't. I've seen a guy with a gun, and I called it in, and I said, this is the guy. They asked me his name, and I give him his name. That way you can run it, you know, and say, yeah, he is a felon, and then boom.
And that's a case where if we got the call, we would stop the individual.
And they asked me what his name was, I gave him the name, and then, I don't know, and the guy left.
Right. So that's a good example of when we would stop someone.
Also, another thing, a lot of people don't know that in bars, it's always been you can't carry in bars, or the premises. That means the parking lot too. The parking lot's part of the premises, you can't have a gun on the premises.
You just can't go into the building. Premises,
You can't have it
case
in
law,
the car?
premise, in the car you can.